What if I told you there is a river in England that flows backwards, ridden by surfers on a single wave for over 12 kilometers? Did you know England's most famous white cliffs are not actually the White Cliffs of Dover, but a secret set that Hollywood prefers? And that beneath a quiet London suburb lies a 35-kilometer labyrinth where Jimi Hendrix once played a concert? From tidal waves that defy physics to chalk cliffs built from trillions of microscopic corpses, from mountains that fooled surveyors for centuries to islands that vanish twice a day, England's geography is packed with secrets hiding in plain sight. This is 50 mind-blowing geography facts about England that will change how you see it. England does not look extreme on a map. It is a modest island nation, no deserts, no active volcanoes, no towering peaks that pierce the clouds. But that is the trick. England's geography is quietly, brilliantly bizarre. It is a place where the ocean rewrites the coastline daily, where medieval tunnels beneath castles commanded the largest military evacuation in history, where a single flood 450,000 years ago tore Britain from Europe and created an island in hours. England's landscape is a masterclass in subtlety and power, where every hill, river, marais, and cliff has a story that rewrites what you thought you knew. Let's dive in. The third most extreme tide on Earth. Let us start with raw power. The Bristol Channel, the body of water between England and Wales, has the third highest tidal range in the entire world, reaching up to 15 meters at spring tides. That is 49 feet. That is the height of a 5-story building. Only Canada's Bay of Fundy and Ungava Bay have higher tides, twice a day. Atlantic Ocean floods the channel, moving up to 10 million tons of sediment with every cycle. The water does not gently rise, it surges, it roars, it transforms shallow estuaries into raging waterways and then vanishes again, leaving mudflats that stretch for miles. The river that runs backwards. The Bristol Channel does something even stranger. It creates the Severn Fray, a tidal wave that races 35 kilometers per hour upstream. It surges against the current at speeds up to 21 kilometers per hour. This isn't a metaphor. It's a literal 2-meter-high wall of water that charges inland like a liquid freight train. The Severn Bore is the second tallest tidal bore in the world, and it's the birthplace of river surfing. Riders have surfed a single, unbroken wave for over 12 kilometers, longer than some highway commutes. The record, set in 1966 at Stonebench, was a wave 2.8 meters tall, taller than a grown man. Southampton Harbour, the harbour with 2 high tides. Southampton's harbour has a geographic glitch that made it one of the world's great ports. It experiences a double high tide, 2 flood peaks within a few hours instead of 1. This doubles the time large ships can load and unload cargo. A quirk of harmonic interactions between primary and secondary tidal waves. It is not just convenient, it is economically priceless. Southampton became a megaport, not because of human planning, but because of an accident in the way tides harmonize. This is the deadest tide race in Britain. Off the coast of Dorset, Portland Bill juts into the English Channel like a stone fist. Here, tidal currents collide at 13 knots. About 24 kilometers per hour, creating what sailors call overfalls. Breaking waves in open water. It is a washing machine for ships. Portland Bill has swallowed hundreds of vessels over the centuries. Even in calm weather, experienced captains give it a wide berth. The mountain that was not the mountain. Scafell Pike at 978 meters is England's highest peak. But for over 200 years, cartographers believed Helvellyn was taller. Scafell Pike from most angles looks smaller than it is. The surrounding massifs and valleys create an optical illusion, so convincing that even experienced climbers were fooled. It wasn't until the early 1800s that surveyors finally measured Scafell Pike correctly and realized England's crown had been sitting on the wrong mountain. The gorge that kills in winter. Climbing Scafell Pike isn't dangerous because of its height. It's dangerous because of Piers Gill, a hidden chasm that cuts 70 meters deep into the mountain. In winter, it becomes a death trap. Ice coats the bottom, fog hides the edges, and multiple climbers have died slipping into its frozen depths. Piers Gill is so narrow that mist can completely obscure it until you're standing at the edge. Near the summit of Scafell Pike lies Broadcrag Tarn, England's highest standing body of water, sitting at roughly 950 meters. Despite its name, it is actually located on Scafell Pike itself, not Broadcrag, another example of the confusing geography of this mountain range. The Tarn freezes solid from November to March and is a relic of glacial shaping, a tiny mirror of sky perched. Near the roof of England, Wastwater sits at the foot of Scafell Pike. It is England's deepest lake at 79 meters. Its shores drop so steeply that during World War II the Royal Navy used it as a secret testing ground for submarines because the tiny Lake District basin is deeper than many coastal waters. Mountains. They had no names. For centuries, the peaks of Scafell Pike, Ilcrag, and Broadcrag were simply called the Pikes of Scafell. They had no individual identities. It wasn't until the 19th century, when mountaineering became fashionable, that anyone bothered to name them separately. England's highest peaks were so unimportant that nobody thought they were worth distinguishing. The cliffs built from death. The White Cliffs of Dover rise up to 110 meters high and stretching for 13 kilometers along the coast. They're not made of stone, they are made of trillions of microscopic algae called coccoliths that drifted to the seafloor over 30 million years. What looks like solid white rock is actually a cemetery for tiny organisms, compacted into chalk layers up to 500 meters thick. The Cretaceous period, the era of the dinosaurs, is named after these cliffs. Creta is Latin for chalk. An entire geological era is named after an English rock. These cliffs are actually whiter than the White Cliffs. Here's the twist. The Seven Sisters in Sussex are actually whiter and more iconic than the White Cliffs of Dover. Why? Dover's cliffs are protected from erosion to preserve the harbour, so they have turned green with grass and moss. The Seven Sisters, on the other hand, are constantly crumbling into the sea at a rate of 0.5 metre per year. The erosion keeps them brilliant white. The cliffs stay beautiful because they are being destroyed. The valleys are from another coastline. The wave-like peaks and valleys of the Seven Sisters were not carved by the sea. They were cut by rivers of meltwater during the Ice Age. Age over 450,000 years ago. The strange part? The valleys run perpendicular to today's coast because the coastline was somewhere else back then. The sea later broke through and exposed the valleys, turning ancient riverbeds into the iconic undulating cliffs. Hollywood's secret England. Seven Sisters appear in more films than the White Cliffs of Dover. Robin Hood, Harry Potter, and the Goblet of Tunamkshi. Fire Atonement, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Hollywood prefers Sussex to Dover because the cliffs look more dramatic and untouched. If you see iconic English chalk cliffs in a movie, you're probably looking at the Seven Sisters, not Dover, the needle that fell into the sea. The needles on the Isle of Wight are named after a rock that no longer exists. The fourth stack, called Lot's Wife, was a 37-metre-tall, needle-shaped spire. In 1764, during a massive storm, it collapsed. The shockwave was felt 20 miles away in Portsmouth. The remaining three stacks do not look like needles at all, but the name stuck. England named a landmark after a rock that has been gone for 260 years. The cliffs were folded by the Alps. The needles are made of chalk. It stands almost vertical, tilted 80 to 90 degrees. This happened during the Alpine orogeny, the mountain-building event that created the Alps 25 million years ago. The Alps are 800 kilometers away, but their tectonic force reached all the way to England, flipping the chalk layers on their side. When mountains grow in Switzerland, England folds. The Isle of Wight's secret missile range. Between 1955 and 1971, the cliffs near the Needles were home to Britain's secret rocket testing facility. Engineers launched test missiles into the sea to develop satellite technology. In 1971, Britain's only domestically launched satellite, Black Arrow, was essentially born here. This picturesque tourist spot was once a Cold War high-tech weapons lab. The Solent, the narrow body of water between the Isle of Wight and mainland England, was a river 7,000 years ago. As sea levels rose after the last ice age, the river valley flooded and the Isle of Wight was cut off from the mainland. England lost a chunk of itself to the ocean, and what was once a peninsula became an island. Island, the caves that aren't caves. Beneath the London suburb of Chislehurst lies a 35-kilometre network of tunnels. But they are not natural caves. They were hand-dug over centuries to mine chalk and flint. During World War II, 15,000 people sheltered here every night during the Blitz. After the war, the tunnels became a concert venue. Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd, and David Bowie all played there. Here, underground in Chislehurst, beneath a quiet suburb, lies a labyrinth, older than the London Underground, and rock legends filled it with music. The Three Counties system in the Yorkshire Dales is England's longest cave system. It is 86.7 kilometres long and it connects 4 separate cave systems: Easgill, Lost Johns, Pipperkin Pot, and Knott's Pot, into a single underground river. A system that flows beneath 3 counties. It's longer than the London Underground Circle Line, and it's completely natural. The chamber was discovered in 2012. Cheddar Gorge has been explored for centuries, but in 2012, cavers broke through a wall and discovered the Frozen Deep, a chamber 30 metres high and 60 metres long. In one of England's most visited caves, a room bigger than a cathedral had been hidden the entire time, waiting. England's only chalk caves. Chalk is too soft to form stable caves, which makes Beachy Head Cave in Sussex and Canterbury Cave in Kent extraordinary. These caves, over 300 metres long, were formed by tectonic cracks and seawater erosion. They are cathedrals of white stone that should not physically exist. The cave with 2 species of humans. Kent's Cavern in Devon contains the oldest modern human fossil in Northwest. In Europe, a jawbone 44,000 years old. But the cave was inhabited for over 500,000 years, and it contains tools from both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. This is a place where 2 species of humans overlapped. A cave in Devon is a time capsule of humanity's origins, the river that is, sort of, the longest. The Thames is 346 kilometres long, making it England's longest river. Except if you count the River Churn, a tributary that flows year-round from Seven Springs, the system stretches to 369 kilometres, which would make it longer than the Severn at 354 kilometres. England's longest river depends entirely on where you decide to start measuring. Geography is sometimes a question of definition. The river that's half ocean, the Thames, becomes. The tidal limit is at Teddington in West London, but the transition zone where fresh water mixes with brackwater is at Battersea in central London. The Thames is simultaneously a river and an estuary, a hydrological hybrid. The line is as fluid as the water itself. These are the hidden gates that protect London. Since 1982, London has been guarded by the Thames Barrier, one of the largest movable flood barriers in the world. Each of its 10 steel gates weighs 3,300 tons and normally lies flat on the riverbed, invisible. When storm surges threaten, the gates rise from the river to form a wall against the ocean. The barrier has been deployed over 200 times since it was built. London is protected by 33,000 tons of steel that you only see when the bore named after a Viking god. The River Trent has its own tidal bore called Erosion, named after the Norse god of the sea. It's smaller than the Severn bore, reaching 1 to 2 meters, but it travels 50 miles upstream from the Humber estuary to Gainsborough at 19 kilometers per hour. It's still surfable. The Vikings would have understood. England's volumetric champion, the Severn, carries an average of 107 cubic meters of water per second, more than any other river in England or Wales. That's enough to fill 42 Olympic swimming pools every hour. The Severn is a permanent water factory, non-stop, 24/7 for millennia. The wave is faster than you. The Severn bore travels at speeds up to 21 kilometers per hour, faster than most people can run. The tallest bore ever recorded was 2.8 meters high at Stonebench in 1966, taller than a person. This is a wave that can outrun you and stand over you, the coastline that grows when you measure it. England's official coastline is 11,073 miles long, according to the Ordnance Survey, but the more precisely you measure it, the longer it gets. Stranger. This is the coastline paradox, a mathematical phenomenon where fractal-like coastlines become infinite if you measure them at infinite resolution. England's coast is as long as you decide to look. The most landlocked village in England is Coton in the Elms in Derbyshire, the farthest point from the sea in all of England, 70 miles or 113 kilometers in every direction. A tiny village with fewer than 900 people is the geographic centre of England's landmass. In an island nation, you can only ever be 113 kilometers from the ocean. England is never far from the water. Robot lighthouses. England has 266 lighthouses, and every single one has been fully automated since the 1990s. The last manned lighthouse was converted in 1998. Many now run on solar and wind power. The lonely lighthouse keepers are gone. England's coasts are now watched by machines. England's rainforest. The Lake District receives over 3,000 millimeters of rain per year in its highest elevations. Seathwaite in Borrowdale averages 3,552 millimeters annually, making it England's wettest inhabited place. That's more rain than parts of the Amazon rainforest. England has a rainforest. It's just not tropical. The subtropical islands off Cornwall. The Scilly Islands, 30 miles off the coast of Cornwall, have a subtropical microclimate. Palm trees grow here, exotic gardens thrive, winter temperatures rarely drop below freezing. The Gulf Stream transforms this English archipelago into a mini Caribbean, 1,600 kilometers north of the actual subtropics. The Scillies are on the same latitude as Prague, but they feel like the Mediterranean. Lundy Island in the Bristol Channel is 3 miles long and half a mile wide. It has no roads, no cars, no streetlights, and barely any cell service. Only about 28 people live here year-round. The island's name comes from the Old Norse word lundi, meaning puffin. Lundy is a time capsule, a medieval island. In the middle of one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, England's highest peak is a dead volcano. Scafell Pike is made of volcanic rock from the Ordovician period, over 450 million years old. The mountain is the eroded remnant of an ancient volcano that erupted long before dinosaurs existed. The fire has been out for 450 million years, but the body remains, the summit that belongs to the dead. In 1919, the summit of Scafell Pike was gifted to the National Trust as a war memorial for the fallen of the Lake District in World War I. Every person who reaches the top stands on a living monument. The highest point in England is a memorial, the 3 peaks in 24 hours. Scafell Pike is part of the 3 peaks. Challenge is where climbers attempt to summit Scafell Pike, Snowdon in Wales, and Ben Nevis in Scotland within 24 hours. The record, including driving time between mountains, is 4 hours and 20 minutes. People race between 3 countries, climb 3 mountains, and do not sleep. The poet who discovered the mountain, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, made the first documented ascent of Scafell Pike in 1802 and wrote a letter from the summit. Before that, the mountain was so unimportant that nobody had bothered to document climbing it. One of England's most famous poets had to discover the highest peak before anyone else cared. The mountains used to map Britain. In 1826, Scafell Pike was used as a surveying station for the first official mapping of Great Britain. Surveyors camped on a summit for months, waiting for clear weather to measure angles to Snowdon in Wales and to Slieve Donard in Northern Ireland, 179 kilometres away. They spent months on a freezing mountaintop just to see 3 countries at once. The Lake District's name is misleading. It has only one actual lake, Bassenthwaite Lake. Everything else is technically a word for a shallow lake or broad pond, Windermere, Derwent Water, and the others. Windermere, at 14.8 kilometres long and 67 metres deep, is England's largest natural lake. It was gouged out by glaciers during the Ice Age. A glacier carved a 15-kilometre trench, and when the ice melted, the scar filled with water. Windermere is a wound left by a river of ice, plants that forgot to leave. Above 900 metres on Scafell Pike, alpine. Black veins in the white cliffs. The chalk cliffs contain bands of black flint, formed from the skeletal remains of sponges and radiolarians. This flint was mined for 6,000 years by Neolithic humans. England has over 70 Stone Age flint mines. The white cliffs are threaded with black veins that built the Stone Age. Cissbury Ring in Sussex has 270 holes. 270 Neolithic mine shafts on a single hill, dug over 500 years, between 4,500 and 4,000 years before Christ. The shafts go 12 meters deep and connect through horizontal galleries that followed flint seams. Beneath a quiet hill is a 270-shaft industrial complex from the Stone Age, mining long before metal was invented. Beachy Head, the deadliest beautiful cliff. At 162 metres, it is the highest chalk cliff in Britain. It is also one of England's most notorious suicide locations. The most beautiful and the most tragic place in England coexist on the same cliff. Geography sits at the edge between awe and fear, the sea gate carved by waves. Durdle Door in Dorset is a natural limestone arch jutting out into the sea. Into the sea. The arch was carved over millennia by waves cutting through softer rock layers, leaving the harder limestone standing as a gateway. The sea built a bridge by destroying everything around it. Architecture through erosion. The coast that's a history book. The Jurassic coast in Dorset and Devon displays 185 million years of Earth's history in a single coastline. You can walk from the Triassic through the Jurassic to the Cretaceous. A hike along the cliffs is a time machine through 3 geological eras. Then there is the sandbank that eats ships. The Goodwin Sands, off Dover, are a 16-kilometre-long underwater sandbank graveyard. Over 2,000 shipwrecks lie here, from Roman galleys to World War II vessels. At low tide, the sandbank emerges like a ghost island, then vanishes again. A wandering mountain of sand beneath the water that swallows. Ships like quicksand. England's deadliest trap. The flood that made England an island. 450,000 years ago, the English Channel did not exist. A massive flood broke through the chalk ridge that once connected Dover to Calais, carving the strait in a matter of hours. England was torn from Europe by a mega flood. Britain became an island, not gradually, but catastrophically. A landscape that never stops moving, alive. From the marching dunes of the coasts to the tidal bores that race upstream, from the collapsing chalk cliffs to the caves still being discovered centuries after exploration began, England's geography is in motion. The forces of tides, erosion, and time are not historical. They are happening right now. England is rewriting itself every single day, and every fact in this list is part of a story that is still being written. So there you have it. 50 geography facts about England that prove this island is far stranger and more powerful than any textbook ever told you. From tides that move mountains of sediment to cliffs built from death, from mountains hidden by optical illusions to underground labyrinths where rock stars played. England is a masterclass in geography hiding in